It was a calm evening in the heart of Rosario, Argentina. The air was cool and crisp, as the sun had long since dipped below the horizon. The streets were quiet, the world wrapped in the soft hush of twilight. Lionel Messi had just finished his evening walk and was heading back to his small but cozy home in the quiet neighborhood he had grown up in. With his iconic number 10 jersey, a well-worn cap, and a pair of comfortable sneakers, he resembled the humble man that he always tried to be, despite his fame. As he turned a corner, Messi's attention was drawn to a car parked by the side of the street. It was an old sedan, its headlights flashing intermittently. At first, it seemed like a minor distraction, but as he continued to walk past, something about it caught his attention. The lights were erratic, flickering like a strobe in the night, and the car was abandoned with the engine running. A sudden sense of unease crept up his spine, but then, something more pressing hit his mind. He knew that this wasn't just an ordinary situation. Messi's heart quickened as the thought flashed through his mind. What if someone inside is in trouble? What if something had happened? He stopped in his tracks, a quick surge of adrenaline rushing through him, just like the moments before a big match. His instincts kicked in, and without thinking twice, he turned and made his way toward the car. The city was peaceful, but that wasn't the case for the car. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, and Messi could hear the faint sound of someone groaning from inside. His quick decision-making, honed on countless football fields, took over, and in an instant, he was at the window. "Hello? Are you okay?" Messi called out, knocking softly on the window. There was no immediate response, only the faint groaning. He knew time was of the essence, and something told him he couldn't waste a single moment. He quickly opened the door, stepping inside the car with his heart pounding in his chest. That's when he saw her, a woman, slumped over in the driver's seat, her face pale and her body trembling. She was clearly in distress, and her breathing was shallow, rapid. Without hesitation, Messi took a step back and looked around. His eyes darted through the empty street. Where are the police when you need them? He thought. He quickly checked his phone for any emergency services, but there was no time to waste. The nearest hospital wasn't far, he knew it well. It was the same hospital where he had been treated after his injuries during his early career, and it had a reputation for having some of the best doctors in the area. Messi made up his mind in an instant. This was no longer about soccer, fame, or the adoring fans who loved him. It was about saving this woman's life. Messi wasn't just a star on the field, he was a human being, someone who cared deeply for the people around him. Without even thinking about it, he slid the woman gently into the passenger seat, doing his best to keep her stable. He started the car and drove off, his fingers gripping the wheel with determination. The quiet streets, usually filled with the buzz of the city, now seemed like an endless stretch of asphalt. As Messi sped toward the hospital, his mind raced. Will I make it in time? But despite the gravity of the situation, his calmness remained. The reflexes that had made him the best footballer in the world now guided his every move. As he neared the hospital, he could see the bright lights shining in the distance. It was a beacon, a place where hope met action. Messi pushed the car forward, not stopping for a single moment. He parked as close to the entrance as possible, his mind focused solely on getting the woman help. He jumped out of the car and rushed around to the passenger side, carefully lifting her out of the seat. At that moment, he could feel his heart racing, not because of the pressure of being a public figure, but because this woman's life was in his hands. Help! Somebody, please, he called out as he approached the emergency entrance. Two doctors rushed over, their faces filled with concern, but one of them stopped in his tracks when he saw Messi. It was hard to ignore the presence of the world's greatest footballer, but in that moment, the doctors knew what was most important, saving the woman's life. They quickly took her from Messi's arms and rushed her inside, motioning for him to follow. Messi, trying to remain calm, entered the hospital's emergency room. He stood there, feeling a bit out of place amid the frenzy, but still determined to make sure that everything would be okay. He stood near the door, waiting for the doctors to come back with an update. Minutes felt like hours. His thoughts drifted back to the field, where time moved quickly, and everything was calculated. But here, everything was unpredictable, and he couldn't predict what would happen next. Would she survive? He hoped so. He prayed so. As Messi stood there, pacing nervously, he heard the familiar sound of a doctor approaching. It was a woman, wearing a white lab coat, her face lined with concern. She looked at Messi and gave him a small nod, a recognition of who he was, but it was clear her focus was entirely on the situation at hand. "She's stable now," the doctor said, relief in her voice. "She was in shock, but we've given her the proper treatment. She'll need rest, but she's going to be okay." Messi let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft but filled with gratitude. The doctor nodded. "No need to thank us. You were the one who brought her here. That's what matters." As Messi stood there, silently processing everything, the woman he had saved was wheeled into a recovery room. He was just about to leave when the doctor stopped him again. "She's asking for you." Messi was taken aback. He had barely said anything to the woman, but he nodded and followed the doctor into the room. The woman, now sitting up in bed, looked up at him with tired but thankful eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raspy but sincere. "You saved my life." Messi smiled, humbly, but there was something in her eyes, a deep sense of gratitude that he couldn't ignore. "I just did what anyone would do." The woman smiled back, her hand trembling as she reached for his. "No, you don't understand. I was lost. I didn't know where to turn. But you were there. You didn't hesitate. I'll never forget this." As Messi stood there, unsure of what else to say, the woman's expression softened. "My name is Gabriela. And this is my son." She motioned to her stomach, her eyes twinkling with warmth despite her recent ordeal. "You're going to be okay," Messi assured her, still feeling a strong sense of relief. Gabriela took a deep breath and then smiled. "I'll name him Leonardo." The name hung in the air like a soft melody, a name full of promise, of potential. Messi felt a connection, a moment that would forever remain etched in his heart. And then, as if compelled by the sincerity of the moment, he looked at Gabriela with a kind of resolve. "I want to help you," he said. "I'll be your son's godfather. And if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I'll always be here. In fact, I'd like you to come to Barcelona. Maybe one day, your son will play football, just like I did." Gabriela's eyes filled with tears, her gratitude immeasurable. "I thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "There's no need for repayment," Messi said. "Just take care of yourself and Leonardo." And with that, Messi walked out of the room, knowing his life had just been touched by something far more significant than any football match he had ever played. The next chapter in his story would be written not just in goals and victories, but in acts of kindness and the bonds of family. The following days felt surreal to Lionel Messi. What had started as a random encounter on a quiet street had turned into a turning point in his life. He couldn't help but think about Gabriela and her newborn son, Leonardo. He had promised to be their godfather, but the bond had already felt stronger than any contract or obligation. The woman and her child had a place in his heart, one that was now intertwined with the family he cherished so much. Messi couldn't deny the deep sense of responsibility that had settled in his chest after that night. As a footballer, he had often been called the world's greatest, but it was moments like this, when he could make a tangible difference in someone's life, that made him feel truly fulfilled. It wasn't about trophies or accolades. It was about connecting with people, especially those who needed help the most. The following week, Messi arranged for a small ceremony in which Gabriela, her family, and a few close friends would gather to officially welcome Leonardo into the world. Messi had flown down to Rosario from Barcelona, his home away from home. The city had a certain charm that never let him forget where he came from. In his heart, it would always be home, no matter how far his career took him. On the day of the ceremony, Messi stood in the living room of Gabriela's modest apartment. There were balloons, soft music playing in the background, and a table full of food. The atmosphere was warm, intimate, a far cry from the packed stadiums and flashing cameras of his usual life. Yet, there was something special about this moment. Messi, who had played in some of the most prestigious arenas in the world, felt an overwhelming sense of peace standing there, surrounded by people who had nothing but gratitude for him. Gabriela held her son, his tiny fingers wrapped around her hand, as she smiled up at Messi. Her eyes were filled with emotion, and her voice, though soft, carried a weight of gratitude. "I can't believe this is happening," she said, almost as if she were speaking to herself more than to him. Messi smiled, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. "I'm honored to be part of your son's life, Gabriela. You've been through a lot, but this little one is going to grow up strong." The baby, Leonardo, gurgled in his mother's arms, oblivious to the significance of the moment but creating a warm connection between everyone present. Messi felt the weight of his words. His promise to be there for them wasn't just a formality. It was a commitment, one that went far beyond being a celebrity figurehead. He wanted to make sure Gabriela and her child had the best future possible. As the day progressed, Messi spoke to Gabriela's family, her close friends, and even met a few of her neighbors. Everyone was in awe of him, not because of his status as a global football icon, but because of his kindness and willingness to help. They had seen his fame on television, heard stories about his remarkable career, but meeting him in person left them all speechless. He wasn't just the man who won Ballon d'Ors or scored incredible goals, he was the man who had saved Gabriela's life and offered a new hope for her and Leonardo's future. Later that evening, as the guests began to leave, Messi took a moment to speak privately with Gabriela. She had been a beacon of hope throughout this process, but he knew she had a lot on her mind. Becoming a single mother had its challenges, especially without much support from her own family. But Messi wasn't going to let her face this alone. "I've been thinking," he began, looking over at her with earnest eyes. "You and Leonardo should come to Barcelona with me. I know it's a big step, but I want to give you both the chance to start fresh. I've arranged everything, flights, accommodation, everything you need." Gabriela looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. "You would do that for us?" Messi nodded firmly. "Of course. You don't need to worry about anything. I want Leonardo to grow up in a place where he can dream big, just like I did. And who knows? Maybe one day, he'll be kicking a ball just like me." Tears filled Gabriela's eyes again, but this time, it wasn't from fear or uncertainty. It was from sheer gratitude. She had always wanted more for her son. A chance to give him a future filled with opportunities that she never had. And now, with Messi's offer, those dreams were closer than ever before. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you enough." Messi gave a small, reassuring smile. "You don't have to thank me. We're family now. And family always looks out for each other." The next few days were filled with frantic packing, arrangements, and preparations. Gabriela could hardly believe what was happening, but she knew it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She trusted Messi, and she could see the genuine care he had for her and her son. When they boarded the flight to Barcelona, Messi stayed by their side, making sure that every detail was handled. He introduced Gabriela to some of his closest friends, colleagues, and people in the city who would support them during their transition. His status as a global icon certainly helped open doors, but more than that, his reputation for kindness and generosity had paved the way for them to feel comfortable in an unfamiliar place. Barcelona, with its lively streets and rich football culture, was a world apart from the quiet, humble surroundings of Rosario. But as soon as Gabriela and Leonardo arrived, they could sense the magic in the air. It was a place where dreams could come true, where hard work and passion could take you places beyond your wildest imagination. As time passed, Gabriela settled into her new life in Barcelona. Messi made sure they had everything they needed: financial support, a comfortable home, and access to the best medical care. He helped Gabriela find work and introduced her to people who could guide her as she adjusted to life in Spain. For her, every new experience felt like a small miracle. She had come from so little, and now, with Messi's help, her son's future seemed boundless. Leonardo, now a toddler, would often run around Messi's house, giggling and kicking small footballs with Messi, as if he already knew the magic of the game. Messi would watch him play with a smile, imagining the day when the boy would be old enough to join the youth academies in Barcelona. Who knew what the future would hold? But Messi had a feeling that this child would one day create his own path in the world of football, just as he had. In the years that followed, Messi remained a constant presence in Leonardo's life, guiding him in the game and in life, showing him that with dedication, kindness, and a love for the sport, anything was possible. And as for Gabriela, she never stopped thanking Messi for everything he had done for her family, though she knew that no words could ever truly capture the depth of her gratitude. In the end, the greatest gift Messi had ever given wasn't just a helping hand or an opportunity in Barcelona, it was the love and care that had created a bond stronger than any football match. He had touched a life, and in doing so, he had changed the course of a family's future forever. The Godfather of football had, once again, proven that sometimes, the greatest victories aren't the ones that appear on the scoreboard.